Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. This is Majib Khazi, and you're watching Washington Roundtable on TV Voice of Kashmir. We have been discussing a series on Kashmir as a Switzerland of South Asia. This is our third episode, and we are joined by our very esteemed guest who is going to talk about tourism and other industries that are vital for the economy of Kashmir, because historically we have seen the Kashmir is rich by virtue of its history and political controversies, offers exquisite, special native cuisines and festive tea, rugged trekking routes that you can enjoy, and obviously the famous houseboats of Srinagar. And we cannot ignore, when we talk about tourism, the spiritual moments when we reflect on our religious tourism that several um, people of followers of different faiths can enjoy, and obviously the native craftsmanship and the carpet textile and so many other things that we can talk about that can not only boost and help the economy, but these are the resources that are not tapped by the virtue of unrest that is being faced in the region. So I'm joined by a very esteemed guest who has an in-depth knowledge on the subject, as well as he is current president of the Kashmir Global Council. Uh, Farooq Siddiqui sir, welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me again. And I am delighted that you are doing this series. And I hope by this series we will be able to make the people of Kashmir aware of why we are looking for independence and sovereignty so that we can have our own resources for the benefit of the people of Kashmir, and which is in accordance with the political and civil rights, the Covenant of Political and Civil Rights of United Nations, Article 1, that says that the indigenous people have the right to the resources that their land has, and it should be used for the benefit of their own welfare. So, which is important. That has not happened with Kashmir under occupation. Uh,
Rightly said. Absolutely, because a lot of people have this argument. Basically, they object to the narrative that if the Kashmir becomes an independent, how would it survive on its own? And that's part of the reason we are discussing this series of discussion. In the last two episodes, you have given us a general synopsis of the resources that are available, and you went into depth of financial resources that are being used in terms of banking and financing. And today, you're going to tap into tourism and other resources that are available. So please go ahead.
yeah, thank you. We'll continue from what we left the last time. Was the money is available there, the investment is available. The only thing is that investment of the people of Kashmir, the money rather, the of people of Kashmir, as I said last time, that about 98% of the the finances that Kashmir has is being invested outside. Had that money been invested back in Kashmir, then things would have been different. And again, I will recall that conversation that I had with you, telling you very frankly that Maharaja of Kashmir was one of the richest persons in the world. I mean, he had, out of all the other than Maharaja, the Nawab of Deccan, Maharaja
Hari Singh.
Hari Singh was one of the most rich people in his times, and that money that he was they were a jagirdar. The Dogra region was a jagirdar in the beginning, and then they evolved into Maharaja, and uh, so that money came from Kashmir, and it came through horticulture, it came from sericulture, and it came from it did not come from tourism. There was no tourism in Kashmir. The only tourism in Kashmir in recorded history was when the Britishers used to come during vacations and spend some time in the Dal Lake in those houseboats. That was all. And Kashmir basically, and the chest of Maharaja was not because of tourism, but because of the resources that Kashmir had. Now, coming back to tourism, there is a immense potential of tourism in Kashmir. But for a tourism to not have an impact on the environment, you need to create a basic infrastructure that is the sanitary system. The tourism in Kashmir has been encouraged by the people of India or the Indian government and the state government without any thought given to the impact that it will have on the environment, very, very, very sensitive environment of Kashmir. So I, for that matter, would not go for tourism as the main earning economy. But instead, I would say that the 70% of the economy of Kashmir has been agriculture. Unless you do not provide the infrastructure, basic infrastructure for the tourism, and that too also for the high end tourism, Kashmir would get negative impact due to environment abuses, and which has happened. You can see the Dal Lake, the Wular Lake, and all those lakes have gone. They are almost going down, and the army, which is throughout in the higher areas of Kashmir, has been devastating and then deforesting for their personal and for what you call for smuggling purposes. So, secondly, the tourism that needs to be there has to be an higher end tourism, like if you go to Gulmarg, you go to those places where you have people who would be spending money and there will be less impact. So I am not a very strong supporter of tourism in Kashmir, but if tourism is given an opportunity and the infrastructure which we can create, then it is going to have one of the best economy generating sector in
If
Kashmir.
I may ask for 1 second, I know you have a good conversation. What is the reason that you are opposed to the tourism? I'm just wondering.
You see, the tourism in Kashmir is basically the tourist coming from India. There's there are 3 or 4 months of tourism season in Kashmir, and that tourism is coming from. It's not an high-end tourism. It's a tourism from Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and all those places. And when they come in flocks to Kashmir, Kashmir does not have, number one, the transportation system, the impact of that. is uh, extremely hazardous. Then the second is that Kashmir does not have the infrastructure for sanitary system like you have places where the tourism has to be. What happens is that this influx of 300 or 400,000 people in just 2 3 months, it has an impact. And your, you see, basically you, the refuse of human refuse always goes in the ground,
Hmm.
and when it percolates into the ground it goes into the water bodies
Hmm.
and wetlands. And
Makes sense.
where, when it goes into the wetlands and when it goes into the water table, it spoils. So cost benefit ratio of tourism versus the impact, negative impact it has, uh, is that is where I say that tourism is not. Yes, tourism is important. You, when it is a high end tourism, like people who would like to go for skiing,
Hmm.
that's okay.
Hmm.
But if you want to come there to Kashmir 7 days or 8 days with your family, we're not against them coming. But
Hmm.
when you when the infrastructure is not ready, then probably it would be not a good idea that the
Hmm.
tourism is should be kept as one of the economy generating sector. I will come back.
Okay.
Uh, why we have to divert to other resources that we have. Let me explain to you about uh, in this segment. I will explain about the the Padar Valley, Kishtawad, an area in Kashmir, which became famous when there was a landslide in 1882 somewhere in that time. And there was, in that landslide, what happened is that the blue diamond, which is called, it came from the surface. I talked to you earlier also.
Mm-hmm.
There was Richard Hughes in his book Ruby and Sapphires writes, while India use of impure corundum as an abrasive appears to stretch back at least millennia or more than country's history of gem corundum, production is relatively brief. But India did not enter the major leagues of gem corundum production until 1880 with the discovery of sapphire in Kashmir. It is these mines that we now turn to. This is Albert Ramsay saying in the book of Ruby and Sapphires. What he says that in his eyes, he was dazzled by such jewels as never have been seen in the Western world. He says in his book that when I was last in Srinagar, palace of Maharaja in Jammu and Kashmir, 30 trays were brought before me.
Wow.
And if I were to say that any one tray sent to market would fetch me $1 million. This is this is what Albert Ramsay says when he saw he was given 30, he was shown 30 trays of this sapphire. And I was, he says, he further says that he would be giving only a faint impression of the astonishing wealth and beauty of these treasures of this Indian gentleman, which he calls Maharaja as an Indian. So that is what Kashmir had. This was in 1882, so there was no tourism then. It was so. What happened in from 1879 to 1882? Blue sapphires were first discovered in part of the region, and then there was Maharaja started control of these mines, and it is recorded that Delhi jewelers bought up lakhs of worth of stones that time. This is also recorded by the Mallet in 1882. The glory of the days of Kashmir sapphire mine during that period, crystal as large as 5 inches. 5 inches is something like this,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 inches wide. This is recorded by Latouche, who was one of the French painters who visited Kashmir, right? And he was astonished to see that these sapphires of immense wealth was taken by Maharaja. So that made him the one of the richest men in the world that time.
And all of this came because of that landslide that took place. Otherwise, it would not have been discovered.
Yes, it came to light through that landslide. And since then, I will continue. Since then, in 1991, Lala Jyoti Prasad visits the mines as a as an officer, and he mines southwest opening of the new mines. So they open. It was Lala Jyoti Prasad from India who opened the mines. In 1920, Sonu Shah of Jammu leases the mines. I'm just telling you, you will not find a single Kashmiri Muslim who was given the opportunity to mine these. And it is recorded by the what you call the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce.
Hmm.
The Kashmir Chamber of Commerce have many times talked about it, that they are not given any, the Kashmiris are not given any opportunity even to go there. So this was Pandit Labu Ram. He was a junior assistant in mineral survey. He took the maps there and gave it to the Indian people.
Hmm.
There was one person, Lala Jagannath, was given the license to 5,500. Those days it was tolas. That amounts to about, I have calculated, amounts to about 65 kilograms of sapphire. You should see,
Wow.
you should watch Hollywood movies where one sapphire is. I think there was a movie. I forgot the name of the movie in which it was talked about the Kashmiri sapphire worth millions of dollars. It gives. So in 1927, there was Lala Jyoti Prasad. Then Pandit Labu Ram of Kashmir, they extracted 39,000 tolas. That is about 454 kilograms of this precious diamond. In 1944, geologist R. Gaines, I guess his name was Gaines, and Rice, they were who had left U.S. Army. They went and found these mines guarded by the Maharaja, and after the Maharaja was over, it was taken by Jammu Kashmir Minerals. And Jammu Kashmir Minerals have not so far in the last 70 years given one time a contract for the mining to a Kashmiri Muslim. Yeah. So it was given every time to the people from outside the state. And
So the wealth was basically
whenever it was given in Jammu, Dogras.
Dogra. So
Yeah.
not to the Kashmiri non-state.
No,
it was always given to
because
the
they are
non-state.
state. But I am saying that Kashmiri people, you should go to Padar. If you go to Padar, Padar is in Kishtwar. Kishtwar is an area which is predominantly a Muslim area. I
Mhm.
mean, what I would say that indigenous people are the first people who should have the right to their resources, but it was never because they don't have the money. As I said earlier, our money is invested outside. Now,
Right.
in the times of that puppet government of Umar Abdullah, they wanted to extricate this part of mines deeper so that they could generate money and sell it in the international market. And you know what they do? They said that we'll go for global tendering for this.
Hmm.
So not in the last 1.5 century since these blue diamonds were found in Kishtwar, a single Kashmiri has benefit of in terms of GDP growth from these minerals. Instead, what they are doing is they have over the last 60 years talked about tourism as a economy generating, which has reflected adversely on the people of Kashmir. It has
Because
changed, it has changed
Mhm.
the environment adversely. It has impacted the people's livings adversely. It has health hazards associated with it. You have imagine there is no restriction of the pilgrimage. There is no infrastructure of the pilgrimage that Amarnath Yatra takes.
Hmm.
So those people come. There 100,000 people come. Sometimes 200,000 people come with one lota in their hand. That's all they have. They don't have even the clothes on their. So that is a tourism, and it has impacted those glaciers up there. It has
Mhm.
impacted. You should see if you Google or you find the pictures of what has happened in the upper reaches of our mountains and the glaciers. It's devastating. Let me explain. In 2001, there was a 50 billion rupees United Nations fund which was given for the uh, establishing the watersheds. 70% of the watersheds were in Kashmir. And I asked one of the very senior officers of the forest conservation, and what he told me that out of that 50 billion, 90% has gone into the coffers of the corrupt people of
Hmm.
both India and as well as state.
So basically, the people of states have never been giving the full fruits of the
Never,
resources that are out there.
never. You see, India's.
Who do we still have those blue sapphires available,
Oh
or
yes, yes, yes.
people are still mining them? And who
They are
has the
still
control
mining.
right now?
They are going for global mining. They are still mining. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know. I am here, but I have whatever little peeps out, percolates out from newses. They are going global. They are going global for extracting the geothermal energy in Puga Valley. They had
Hmm.
given they had asked an Australian company for taking the energy from there and taking it down again in the northern grid, which would not help Kashmir. So very very important here is to understand that Kashmiris, if given the right to uh, to earn from what they have within their land and beneath their land, they will be one of the richest people. I have calculated also that I mean, this is just one sector of the power sector of Kashmiris can generate a GDP growth, increase rather the GDP of a common Kashmiri by $3,000. One sector. There are so many sectors of agriculture, which we will talk in other way when we have time.
Mhm.
We'll talk how we lost the silk industry for 100 years, which was taken out. So,
For example, I mean, absolutely intriguing and interesting to know all these dimensions of resources that are available in Kashmir. And I was astonished to learn that the part of the reason that you oppose, rightly so, the tourism, which is not high end tourism, because of it's not only damaging the environmental impact on the valley, as well as because the resources and the
it's in fact,
infrastructure is not available for people to reap the complete fruits of it.
it's
But it was also, I mean, to me, I was amazed to learn that we still have those blue diamonds and the sapphires back in the 18th and 19th century, when people would have been a millionaire without even having to tap into other resources. So we do need to continue this discussion,
I
but I'm
mean,
running out of time. I will
right.
ask you to give me last closing comments, please, for the last minute or so.
Let me complete it with the Maharaja of Kashmir was rich man, and he had an army of his own. And
Correct.
his army went right up to his Zorawar Singh,
Hmm.
right up to Tibet and Tibet. So
Correct.
for a person for a Maharaja to finance an army continuously till for his reign, as long as they lived, the Dogra
Hmm.
regime. eh, it is not easy to sustain that army. It's not easy to sustain that wealth. And
Hmm.
that wealth was not falling from skies. It was
Correct.
not coming from Britishers. It was
Hmm.
not coming from across the mountains from the plains of India. It
Correct.
was generated, that wealth was generated within the Kashmir that he reigned for more than 100 years. Uh,
Well, we'll have to leave it right there, and we hope and pray one day the Kashmiris, the rightful owner of these resources, indigenous Kashmiri, will end up reaping the fruits of these resources. Thank you so much for being on the show, and we will continue over this series from the next episode. Thank you,
thank
Varghese.
you.